All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Sumbrum, Artistic Director of Dance Cleveland, and today I am joined by Stephen Petronio, founder, choreographer, and Artistic Director of Stephen Petronio Company. Stephen,
Good,
thanks for joining us.
great to be here. Good morning.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk a little bit about, who is Stephen Petronio Company? What can our viewers expect to see on the stage? And just a few, informational tidbits about the company. So if you want to get started with your background,
Sure.
obviously, what I find so fascinating is that you weren't necessarily a trained dancer from a young age. You didn't have that stereotypical studio upbringing.
Right.
And if you want to elaborate a little bit about that and how you fell into dance, and then
Sure.
how you actually ended up becoming the very first male dancer with Trisha Brown Company, I think it's amazing.
I'm stupidly lucky.
You are.
Well, I will say that I was the first child to go to college in my family. So I was, raised in a lower middle class Italian family who was very loving, who were very loving. But I was a troublemaker and kind of the black sheep. And so I was very determined to jump out of the world I was meant to be in. And so I applied to the fanciest schools I could, and one of them was Hampshire College, and I ended up getting a full scholarship to Hampshire College, and I went pre-med. And in the first few weeks, I met a woman who was a dancer, and we kind of had a fling, and Hampshire's Hampshire's theory in those days was the first 2 weeks for orientation, all parties and lectures. So we went from party to party and drinking and dancing, and at the end of it, she was like, you're a really good dancer. Why don't you take a dance class? And I was like, oh, whatever you say. um, so I took a dance class, and like an obedient hound dog. And it was an improvisation class. I figured that's what I could, I had no training. I didn't know anything about
Right,
it.
start there.
Yeah, so I thought, oh, I'm going to take an improvisation class. And in that improvisation class, which was taught by a woman who's now named Tara McClellan, uh, no, sorry, Tara Steppenberg. She was formerly Francia McClellan. She was, extremely, she came from a traditional Lamone background, but she was extremely experimental, and she was doing very wacky things. We were dancing in cornfields and apple fields, and, doing structured scores and improvisations. And led us on some kind of image journey one day. And in the middle of that class, I had the crazy thunderbolt experience where I was like, oh my God, I've got a body, and I was never aware of it. And so it was a very potent feeling. And even when I describe it, I mean, I write about it in my memoir, but when I describe it, every time I describe it, I still have that very distinct image of looking down and feeling everything below, what was below my chest, which is what, you see when you're a man. You're looking in the mirror, you're looking at your chest up because you're shaving, and that's about it. um so I had this crazy experience, and I couldn't shake it. So and there were no men, and this was 1974. I was one of three men in the program. And I was on stage within a few weeks because they thought they
You
needed
needed
more.
men. Yeah.
Uh, so I didn't even know what was left or right. But I remember having to do an attitude turn. I was cast in a piece of Daniel Lewis, who was part of something called the Contemporary Dance System. I think he teaches now in Miami. Great dancer. And I had to do an attitude turn. And I remember I could do sustained things because it wasn't, I was very focused. But I remember thinking, oh, I mean, I remember my teacher, I remember Tara telling me, okay, this is a very advanced move. Don't freak out. And it was really
Did you
fun.
just go for it?
Of course. I don't know what happened during the show, but what I do know is that I began to build an improvisational scores in that class, and I got very interested in moving groups of people around. And I also
And
figured,
would you say that like that class obviously that's when you had the realization that you were a dancer, I mean, I think that's
Mm,
amazing.
took me a long time to say that phrase, I am a dancer. And then it took me a long time to say that phrase, I am a choreographer. So, it was brand new to me. I was
That
18.
was my question. I mean, at what point did you say, all right, I can do this dance thing? But when did you realize that you could make your own creations?
Well, almost the same time I realized that I could make my own creations before I could dance. Because, it was about structure. For me, it was about structure. And I was, I'm pretty, my mind is quick. My body wasn't trained. So I decided, and I thought, I'll never be a dancer. I'm going to make things. So I began making things in those classes. And then I met Steve Paxton that next semester, who Steve has invented something called contact improvisation, which was perfect for me because it allowed me, contact improvisation is when two bodies improvise around weight and gravity and momentum and inertia, nothing to do with themes or the ideas were physical ideas. And
So
so
do you feel like that style has carried on into your work?
well, I think you could see how the stage that I build is spherical, even though I'm very fond of straight lines and angles, and I really have absorbed a lot of classical vocabulary, if not language. And the distinction is I don't use that vocabulary in the same structure that a classicist would use it. But I'm a very good thief, and as a postmodern punk, I could steal anything and incorporate it into my flow.
I
So
love that as a postmodern punk. I
yeah.
mean, I feel like I've heard that word termed on you a few times.
Well, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for punk. I mean, it was do it yourself. You play three chords and you're a musician. You could do three moves and you're a choreographer. I mean, that gave me the what I didn't know gave me the permission to explore. And so I'm very grateful for that movement in music. I'm also very grateful for being so dumb to think that I could do it without training. So, because I didn't know what I didn't know.
Well, you were very modest because you've created some amazing works, obviously.
Thank
I
you very
think, what
much.
is it, over 40 years, you've created at least 35 works? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yes, I've been called a lot of things, modest as few, no, hardly ever, but yes, thank you. Um, yeah, well, I've made over almost 40 works now, and I've made works on various ballet companies, the Deutsche Opera Ballet and the Frankfurt Ballet, when Billy Forsyth was in charge of that, and that was my first commission actually. And the Lyon Ballet, I made a few works for the Lyon Ballet. So I was not trained in that idiom, so it was really fun to go in. And of course, like I said, I'm the great thief, so I'd go to these ballet companies and I would just watch class. And I didn't have even the language for it. And I kind of pretend I still don't have that language, but I would say twiddle your feet like I saw, to the left or the right. And they would thought it was really funny, and then they would do these crazy things outside of their normal. So, and that's the way I began to build the more classical vocabulary into my so it's I have a continuum. It's based on the direction of energy through the body and out into space, and it's a fluid flowing continuum. And in that continuum, I could drop anything into it. So I think if you think of water rushing down the stream, I could throw anything into that water and the water will carry it. And that's kind of how I built my language.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, you talked about mixing classical movement, lines, linear. We've talked about the flow. What I also think is so interesting is you create such abstract works, but you often pair them with like popular music. Tell me a little bit about what influences you to use popular music.
Well, like I said when we started, I come from a lower middle class family, and I don't mean low class. I mean, economically, but it was music, radio, um, TV, theater, not theater, movies. So popular culture was my entrance into and exit out of the suburban world I was being raised up in. So, and then when I came into the dance world, of course, I was dropped into conversation with Steve Paxton, one of the great thinkers of postmodern movement, and then I became the first member of Trisha Brown, like a genius of motion, and I liked being the crass Italian American guy who liked popular music, and I remember like turning Trisha on to all the music I was listening to, and she thought I was funny. But I felt that it was the wrong thing to do in the dance world, that we weren't allowed to do pop music because it was too traditional. And I thought, well, that's bullshit. I mean, this is supposed to be open. We're supposed to be open to anything in this postmodern idiom. So I'm going to be open to that. And I love to, for many, many years, and I'm still doing it, I would make a big abstract work and then I would preface it with a little a jewel of a pop song that I would like, kind of like a lens that I'd like you to look through to when you're seeing this work.
And I feel like on the program that we're going to have November 12th, I feel like people will get a feel for that because we do have a mixture. We have American Landscapes, and we've got Creep. We've got 2 pieces set to music by Elvis. And then we've got New Prayer for Now. So that trajectory, as you were saying, we've got the pop music. We've got a little bit more advanced works for people to take in. What can people expect to see November 12th?
Well, you're going to see. So we're doing I love Elvis Presley. I was the freak in the family. I liked Elvis and Judy Garland, and everybody else in the family thought I needed to be checked in somewhere. And Elvis was too sexual and femme in a weird way. Although I didn't see it that way. And then Judy Garland was, of course, the most incredible gay icon and train wreck. And I just thought she spoke right to me. So we have the 2 Elvis Presley songs, Love Me Tender and Are You Lonesome Tonight? And these songs they're such great American songs. They're so much part of our history, and it's so sacrilegious to try to choreograph them. But I love to try it.
I love the irony that you create with them, because I think, the movement and the pieces themselves paired with those iconic, as you said, almost like traditional songs.
Right.
It's an interesting pairing. I love it.
Well, I think especially with Love Me Tender, there is a twist about who's tender and who's not, how open, and it's a Valentine. But I'm a little meaner than that in the choreography. You'll see. And then Are You Lonesome Tonight? I made during the pandemic. Honestly, it was selfish because I just felt like we were all so lonely, and that was something I wanted to see. So I didn't think about it as even touring. I made it as a film for Dancers Responding to AIDS. Denise from Dancers Responding to AIDS commissioned it for a virtual festival. Denise Herlin, and so. But and I've made a few others. Someday I'll do the whole
Elvis tribute, right?
Fun, right? And then Creep was the preface work to a work that I made for the Scottish ballet called Ride the Beast. And so the Beast was the Ride the Beast. Actually, I took the name off of a billboard on the West Side Highway, which was some kind of water ride. And I was driving by it, and I was Ride the Beast, and I was like, that's how I feel when I'm choreographing, that I'm riding this beast. So I stole the name from this.
I love that.
It was a boat ride. And so Creep, I put Creep on the beginning of it because first of all, I was working with the Radiohead music, and I loved that song. Creep is just so, it like begged me.
Haunting.
It begged me to make something to it. And creepy, beastie, they seem to go together. So
great. Well, we're really to see the show. We cannot wait. What's the last thing I would say? What is your biggest takeaway? What do you hope people walk out of the theater thinking or feeling?
I would love it if you would suspend your need to make sense of everything. Some things the pop songs, obviously there's lyrics that make sense. you will see it through that lens. The more abstract work is not meant to be understood on that level. Movement can speak to your unconscious body, and that's who I'm talking to, your unconscious body. I promise you, I'm not programming you, but I'm turning up your apple cart, your kinesthetic apple cart, and I hope you feel something from it and enjoy it. My goal is to make you feel with your body.
Well, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you. I think you're going to be getting on a plane soon, right? We'll see you this week.
We'll see you this week. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Bye-bye, Stephen.
Bye bye.